For nearly all the plains tribes of North America, the buffalo was the primary food source and made up a huge part of their lives. The tribes would use every part of the animal, making teepees and shields from their hides, using the bones to make tools. They would make buffalo hide blankets for bedding and to use in trade, even making rope from the hair. For hundreds of years, long before the Europeans and the horse had made their way to the Americas, plains and plains-adjacent tribes had been hunting buffalo on foot, the buffalo jump method being the most common. This would involve usually one young man wearing a buffalo robe, approaching the herd imitating a young buffalo calf. He would then make distressed or injured calf calls and get the herd to move towards him. Once they were moving in the right direction, other members of the tribe would appear on the flanks and behind the herd, yelling and waving blankets, causing a stampede. The bison would now hopefully be running in a pre-planned direction, eventually running right off a cliff, falling to their deaths. Hunts like this would usually include most of the men from a tribe and could feed and clothe an entire tribe for months at a time. This wasn't the only way to kill buffalo on foot. Other methods included driving them into thick timber where they would be shot with bow and arrows, or hunting them in the winter using snowshoes to follow them until they got stuck in deep snow, then easily killing them. Hunts like this were extremely dangerous and often had mixed results. This all changed in 1519, however, with the introduction of the horse to North America, and again in the 1680 Pueblo Revolt, when as much as 1,500 Spanish horses were released into the Great Plains. The introduction of the horse deserves a video all on its own. It changed Indian warfare and allowed tribes to become fully nomadic. But for now, we're focusing on the buffalo. Tribes could now cover huge distances in search of food and transport it much easier. By the year 1700, all plains tribes now had access to the horse, and a whole new style of hunting buffalo was created. Now men could provoke herds into a stampede with their horses, and then ride right alongside them, shooting arrows and lancing them the whole way. Men would train their special hunting horses to run right into a buffalo stampede without fear. These were very dangerous hunts, and they became highly ritualized and ceremonial. It became a time for young men to prove themselves, with boys being allowed to participate in small ways starting at the age of 10 or 11. The North American Plains buffalo hunt is a spectacle that we can only imagine, riding full speed on your horse next to a stampede of thousands of buffalo, with warriors all around you screaming and whooping as you take down dozens of buffalo in one hunt. Sadly, this is now a thing of the past. With the extreme overhunting of buffalo, by the late 1880s, there were as few as 500 buffalo left on the North American continent. There must have been hundreds and hundreds of untold buffalo hunts that are now lost to history. Luckily, we still do have some first-hand accounts from these hunts, one of which comes from William Thomas Hamilton, also known as Wildcat Bill. Bill was born in 1822 in Scotland. When he was only a few years old, a council of men, including his father and uncle, decided to leave Scotland for either the United States or India. In his own autobiography titled My 60 Years on the Plains, he says, quote, "A vote was taken which resulted in a tie, thus forcing the captain to cast his ballot. He voted for America, and by so doing destined me to fight Indians instead of hunting Bengal tigers in India." When Bill was 20 years old, his father arranged for him to join a company of hunters and trappers on a year-long expedition. The year was 1842, and it began William Hamilton's life as a frontiersman. A few weeks into their journey, while on the Salt Creek, they encountered some Kiowa chasing a small buffalo herd. Bill saying, quote, "The stalk was barely secured when the buffalo passed in close vicinity of camp, followed by 30 painted Kiowa warriors, a wild and savage outfit they were. I had seen many Indians in St. Louis at different times, but none so wild and savage as these were. They didn't know if they would have to fight, as they only had 8 men compared to the Kiowas' 30. The Kiowas were semi-hostile with the men, telling them they needed to pay for passing through their land, even though they were actually in Pawnee country. The leader of their party, Bill Williams, began to negotiate with them using Plains Sign Language, a universal sign language that all tribes of the Plains and surrounding areas used to communicate with each other, also known as sign talk. It was very common for mountain men, traders, and frontiersmen to also learn this sign language. He eventually was able to talk the Kiowas into leaving them alone for a small payment of tobacco, although they were still fearful of attack. The party then started making their way to the Platte River, looking for Cheyennes who some of the more experienced men in the party had traded with in the past. They searched for a few days, hunting antelope along the way. One night, around the evening time, 3 young Indians rode into their camp. They had been scouting for enemies, and they were Cheyenne. They told the men that their camp was just a short ride up the river. Bill Williams gave the boys some tobacco to give to their chief White Antelope, who he had met before, and told them to let the camp know that they would visit the village the next day. He also invited the young Cheyennes to eat dinner with them and tried to figure out what the tribe needed most so he could have the upper hand in trading. The next day, the men rode into the Cheyenne camp and decided that they were going to stay for a few days. They spent the day trading, the mountain men bringing powder, half-ounce balls, flints, beads, paint, blue and scarlet cloths, blankets, calico, and knives. All of this trade was conducted through plain sign language, which Wildcat Bill claims he picked up on very fast. He would go on to claim multiple times in his autobiography that he became the most proficient white man on the plains when it came to sign talk. After the day's trading was concluded, the Cheyenne and the mountain men had a feast with food supplied by both parties. During the dinner, the 20-year-old Wildcat Bill met the son of the chief, named Swift Runner, who was about his same age. Swift Runner took an instant liking to Bill, showing him around the village, doing his best to teach him signs, and introducing him as his friend to multiple people in the tribe. Swift Runner told Bill that there was a large hunting party going after buffalo the next morning, and that he would let Bill use one of his buffalo horses if he wanted to join them. After checking with Bill Williams, he agreed to go. The next morning, 50 hunters and about 20 women with pack animals gathered for the hunt. They traveled for close to 10 miles when the party's scouts discovered a herd. They then took a long detour to get into a better position. The Cheyenne then prepared for the hunt, stripping down to their breechclouts and splitting into two groups, with each group having a leader, the leader making sure no individual moves in too early and spoils the hunt. They rode within a quarter of a mile of the herd, and then the order was given to start the hunt. A quote from the book says, "Here would have been a grand scene for an artist to put on a canvas. This wild array of naked Indians sending forth yell after yell and riding like demons in their eagerness to bring down the first buffalo, for this is quite a feat and is commented upon by the whole village." Swift Runner and his cousin together ended up bringing down the first buffalo. Swift Runner then pointed out a buffalo cow for Bill to shoot. He wasn't exactly sure where to shoot, so he aimed for the kidneys and missed. But his bullet did end up breaking the cow's back, dropping her. Bill would then observe the rest of the hunt, saying, quote, "There was yelling and shooting in every direction, and many riderless ponies were mixed in with the buffalo, with Indians after them, reckless if they in turn were dismounted as their friends had been, by the ponies stepping into prairie dog or badger holes. Many an Indian has come to grief by having an arm or a leg broken in this way. Ponies are sure-footed, but in a run such as this one, where over 1,000 buffalo are tearing at full speed over the prairie, a dust is created, which makes it impossible for ponies to see the holes. Hence the mishaps, which are very common. Bill brought down 4 buffalo during the hunt, and claimed that he could have gotten more, but he was distracted by the Cheyennes shooting the buffalo with their arrows. They then started butchering, which took 2 hours, each pack horse ending up with a load of 300 pounds of meat. When they arrived back at the village, the whole tribe was lined up to hear about the hunt. After relating all the details of the day, the mountain men and the Cheyenne had a buffalo feast, eating all the best parts in huge amounts and drying the rest by cutting it into thin slices and spreading it on racks in the sun. With pack horses full of furs they had traded for, the mountain men decided to leave the next day. Wildcat Bill was able to witness and participate in something that most white men, even in 1842, could only imagine, and were lucky that he decided to document all of his adventures, and this was just his first expedition. Before leaving the Cheyenne camp, Wildcat Bill was given 6 pairs of freshly made moccasins. Swift Runner came to Bill as the men were leaving and gave him his horse as a gift, the same horse he had ridden on during the hunt. Bill named him Runner.